Right now, I'm joined back by Dr. David Kabata. Dr. Hari, welcome to the show. Looking at the Economic Survey 2023, I was just checking at the numbers. First of all, employment, yeah? Quite interesting because, MSME is still the major employer in this particular country. But just looking at those numbers, because my colleague was questioning KNBS MD about the issue of inflation dropping from 9.2% to 7.9%. To a majority of people, that doesn't make sense. Help those numbers make sense.
Okay, thank you, Noah. I think the reason as to why we're talking about the inflation dropping is because, you see, inflation in this country is either imported inflation or drought-driven inflation. So most of the times when we have rains, what usually happens is that the food is available, some food are available, and because the food is available, then what happens is that the prices of some food commodities goes down. And I think that is what they anticipate, because that is an anticipation that the inflation is going to go down. Okay, the common mwananchi may not feel it because for them, they want everything, even the hard goods, to go down. And I think that is why you see them saying that maybe those numbers are not really relevant. But I also expect that the inflation is going to go down a bit, basically because of some of these rainfalls that we see in our country.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, to these numbers, real GDP, slowed down to 4.8%, of course, for the year 2022. I was seeing nominal GDP 13.4 trillion. And these can be very complex numbers. In fact, for majority of Kenyans, none of us are having this conversation on the streets asking ourselves, what is the nominal GDP and why is it growing or dropping? In simple terms, what's the meaning of this?
Now, GDP is actually the total production in a country, whatever is produced in a country. So when you talk about the nominal GDP, we calculate it using the prevailing market rates in the country. And that is what we are giving at 13 trillion. So we look at everything that is being produced in all the sectors of the economy. Then we multiply by the prevailing prices in the market. Then we have what we call the nominal GDP. That is the 13 trillion. Now, the reason as to why it was deemed to go down, basically because of one election. Every election, we have a slowness in the economy, basically because of the uncertainties. Especially if you have a transitional election, business people don't want to risk,
yes.
And that is one of the reasons that made it to go down. The other one is drought. If you look at the agricultural sector, it was not doing well. It has not been doing well. Because we have not had good rainfall for the last I think 3 years. So agriculture is one of the biggest sector in this country. So anytime agriculture is not doing well, our whole economic production, I like using the word output rather than GDP, because if you use output or production of goods and services in the country, people are going to understand, will go down because of that. The other issue is also the issue of the currency. Remember, most of the production in this country, or the money changing hands in this country, is through importation of goods and services, and then we have businesses and all these things. So when you have the currency depreciating, it hits on the importation of goods and services, and this may also have a problem when it comes to slowing the economy of the country.
Okay.
Yes.
And now we, every day on Wednesday we focus on MSME, right,
Yes.
on business today. Juxtapose two areas or three. Listen to the beginning labor. Is there an intentional effort to look at this MSME sector, which seems to be dominating when it comes to employment and also, GDP contribution?
You don't know what really amazes me with this country is that even these MSMEs, we give them a very bad name, jua kali, informal sector. You see, when you talk about an informal sector, you are talking about a sector that is not well monitored by the government. Why? Because it is not important. Because I ask myself, why should it be an important sector and then we remain with it being informal? Because if you look at the survey, you'll see that the private sector is growing it's not growing as quickly as the informal sector. And one of the reasons is, one, the businesses at the informal sector do not graduate. We call it the missing middle. We have so many businesses at the micro level, the small businesses, the micro level, and very few in large and also what we call the middle enterprise. They don't graduate because there is no effort to make them graduate. Because we always believe that the biggest problem in SMEs in this country is money. But for me, I'm in an MSME, and I'll tell you that my problem is not money. My problem is a market. So they can be able to produce goods and services. But if they do not have the market where they can be able to sell those goods and services, then we have a problem. Yeah. And I think the government may have a very, very good strategy of putting money into the SMEs, but they do not go a whole hog to also help them to access the market. If you look at developed nations like China, what happens is that their micro enterprises and small enterprises are able to produce goods that we consume here. Who gets the market for them? The government. So I think we need to open up our eyes and try to see how we can be able to help them, even change their name. You cannot be calling something that is contributing 85% of your employment in this country informal or juakali. Give it a good name so that we can also have an interest in growth of it.
Okay. Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. I love the passion that you portray here. And if I may just take something, this issue of SME financing. You say that, we focus on SME, SME needing money, whereas they should look at the market. Can we just take a look at that particular story, Joy, on SME financing, and I want to get your points briefly because looking at the Economic Survey Report 2023, it revealed that 19.1 million people are in the labor force. But yes, actually credit to MSMEs. Now, 85% of workers are employed in the micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. Though this sector has long been neglected by the credit market due to high risks attached to it. Let's listen.
First of all, here we need to mention that especially in Kenya and other emerging economies, the sector of micro enterprises is very, very important, as most of the people are actually working there. A lot of these customers are underbanked. We are focusing to include these people back into the financial system for them to be able to access capital and to actually use that capital. What it means that a lot of these people we work with are very young, less than 30 years age. They are coming from rural areas. Half of them also have an income less than 30,000 shillings per month. What we see a lot of customers are using money for is to deploy them into various businesses. And these are very representable in, let's say, small shop, where owner has a need for capital to buy some goods and sell them for profit.
Need for capital. Doctor, in less than 10 seconds, our focus should be on market and not capital?
We should focus on both, and mostly the market.
Okay.
The capital is not a problem when you have a good idea.
All right, definitely. Capital is not a problem when you have a good idea.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. David Kabata, for your time. We appreciate it. All right. So moving on to matters budget, because also MSME